promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar, 7 o'clock in Lagos. Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democrats Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. This is Newslink. Here are the top stories. IMF wraps up visit to Senegal as government unveils recovery plan amid hidden debt crisis. Côte d'Ivoire's Independent Electoral Commission seals the candidacy registration phase ahead of October 25 elections. A Carnifing court grant bail to 23 Pura protesters warns against further unauthorized gathering.
We will be jailed, we will be locked up, but we will be released, but Gambia will be free. We are all going to get into the various cars that are here to go home. We understand that unless our wish, we are going to walk back to Westfield. But sometimes we must re-strategize, we must re-energize, and we must come back again.
And the African Chiefs of Defense Staff Summit ends today in Abuja, Nigeria.
The organization is in the process of activating a 260,000 rapid deployment counter-terrorism brigade and to provide logistic and financial support to frontline states facing terrorism.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
My name is Sankule Janko. Glad to have you joined us. Newslink begins here in Dakar. Well, a delegation from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, has wrapped up talks with Senegalese authorities on a potential economic reform plan. The visit follows alarming new debt figures that revealed liabilities far higher than previously thought. The IMF praised the government's push for transparency, while Senegal launched an ambitious recovery strategy to tackle the crisis and boost long-term growth. Christopher Atichu reports.
A team from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, wrapped up its long visit to Dakar on August 26, holding talks with Senegalese officials on a new economic reform program. This comes as the country confronts a head-on debt crisis. What was reported as 74% of GDP at the end of 2023 turned out to be nearly 119% by the end of 2024 due to previously undisclosed liabilities. The IMF delegation led by Edward Gemayel praised the government push for transparency. Talks centered on better debt management, tackling arrears, and creating a centralized financial database. At the same time, the government unveiled its economic and social recovery plan, aiming to reverse what Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko called a catastrophic legacy. The plan targets a budget deficit of 14% and leans heavily on domestic funding through taxes, asset recycling, and non-debt financing. Despite fiscal pressure, the economy is showing signs of resilience. GDP grew by over 12% in early 2025, driven by oil and gas production, while inflation remains low at 0.7%.
Christopher Atichu with that report. Meanwhile, Senegalese President Bassirou Diomaye Faye met with the French President Emmanuel Macron at the Élysée Palace during the French Entrepreneurs Forum hosted by MEDEF. The meeting focused on resetting relations following France's military withdrawal from Senegal. Key topics include investment, education, healthcare, and sustainable development. The leaders also addressed historical reconciliation, particularly the 1944 Chare massacre. Macron recently acknowledged the event as a massacre in a letter to Faye, the first official French recognition using the term. Both presidents emphasized the need to continue this work of historic acknowledgement. In Côte d'Ivoire, as the Independent Electoral Commission reiterates its readiness to conduct transparent and inclusive elections on October 25, 2025, the electoral umpire disclosed on Tuesday at the end of the candidacy file submission period by presidential aspirants. Accompanied by hundreds of party supporters and senior government officials, President Alassane Ouattara officially entered the race for a four-term bid following the receipt of his nomination form by IEC President Ibrahim Koulibaly. Moving a step forward in the electoral process, the Commission is expected to soon publish a list of qualified candidates as stipulated by law. Here is an excerpt of President Alassane Ouattara.
I did so in response to the call of my party, the RHDP, and to the call of many Ivorians who want us to continue together on the path of peace, stability, and development that our country has been experiencing for several years. In this regard, I would like to thank the strong mobilization of our compatriots who were keen to be present for this important stage of the electoral process. Beyond an administrative act, my candidacy is therefore in line with the spirit of responsibility and respect for the rule of law.
President Alassane Ouattara of Côte d'Ivoire speaking there. In Mali, the political party dissolution case has taken a new turn following the decision of the High Court of Commune 1 to suspend the measure. The case is now before the Constitutional Court. This decisive step raises both hopes and questions for the dissolved parties. Abdullah Hassan has more in this report.
The court made the pronouncement on Monday, flashing a light of chance and hope for the defense lawyers who believe they have reached an important milestone. However, these legal proceedings are far from over, as all eyes are now on the Constitutional Court. The highest judicial organ of the Malian society must rule on the legality and compliance of the political party's dissolution. According to legal expert Mahamadou Konate, the Supreme Court's ruling could be crucial in this case. For his part, political analyst Ousmane Diao emphasizes that the decision taken at first instance gives hope to the dissolved political parties. This decision, he believes, could lead to the restoration of the rule of law in the country. For Malians at home and abroad, they hope for the Constitutional Court's verdict in the coming days to restore the once vibrant multi-party system in the country. It is worth noting that the transitional government on May 12, 2025 announced a decree dissolving all political parties and groups, citing recommendations from a recently held national conference to reconfigure the system.
A report by WDR's Bamako correspondent Ali Ucham, voiced by Abdullah Hassan. In Guinea-Bissau, Prime Minister Brahima Kamara is currently receiving medical treatment in Dakar, Senegal, after collapsing shortly following his swearing-in as member of the Council of State. Imo Eda tells us more.
Kamara was medically evacuated to Dakar on Monday evening aboard a special military flight. After suffering a sudden illness, he was initially taken to the main military hospital in Bissau, where he received first aid. Authorities in Bissau have not disclosed the expected duration of his medical stay in Dakar. They cited only the need to ensure the preservation of his full physical condition and the continuity of the high-level functions he performs. Appointed Prime Minister on August 7 to succeed Rio Duarte de Barros, Kamara, the coordinator of the opposition party, Madam G15, officially took office the following day. His appointment comes just months ahead of the presidential election scheduled for November, in which President Umaru Sissoco Embalo is expected to run for re-election.
Imo Edet filed that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
In the Gambia, the Carnaby Magistrates Court has granted bail to 23 people arrested during last Friday's Pura protest. Bail was set at $50,000 or an equivalent of $700 each, with an option of a Gambian surety or a valid biometric ID card. Magistrate Thomas Toure warned the accused to stay away from any further unauthorized protests while the case is ongoing. Any breach of the bail terms, he said, would lead to an automatic revocation. In a similar vein, development on Tuesday, 21 protesters, including several women, have regained their freedom following extended negotiations with authorities. The group was arrested by police on Monday while on their way to the National Assembly to engage with officials. While they insist that no offense was committed, the police asserted that the youths were detained for common nuisance and obstruction of offices transporting remanded protesters linked to last week's unlawful assembly at the Pura headquarters along Caraba Avenue. Their convergence was to denounce the recent hike in data subscription, while the Seibu Kamara, spokesperson for Gambians Against Looted Assets Gala, spoke to fellow protesters after their release.
We will be jailed, we will be locked up, but we will be released, but Gambia will be free. We are going to get into the various cars that are here to go home. We understand that unless our wish, we are going to walk back to Westfield. But sometimes we must re-strategize, we must re-energize, and we must come back again. But for now, let's be within the confinement of the law. Let's dispatch, go home, Sangulen, we are going to communicate on the next step and what is going to happen. Are you okay?
Yeah, we are people. Meanwhile, the presidency in a statement says President Adam Barrow has since set up a high committee to review recent price regulations in telecommunications sector introduced by Public Utilities Regulatory Authority PURA after the recent protest by young people there. Now, after 3 days of high-level talks, the first African Chief of Defense Staff Summit wraps up today in Abuja, Nigeria. The conference brought together military leaders from 54 African countries under the theme Combating Contemporary Threats to Regional Peace and Security. Delegates discussed growing security challenges ranging from terrorism and piracy to transnational crime, especially in the Sahel, which accounted for over half of the global terrorism deaths in 2024. Representing ECOWAS, Ambassador Abdel Fattah Musa said the bloc is stepping up counter-terrorism efforts.
ECOWAS is acutely aware of the threat of renewed geostrategic and geopolitical processes unfolding in West Africa and beyond that threaten renewed proxy wars akin to the Cold War era, due in part to the acute insecurity facing the continent, and it is determined to avert this scenario. A first step in this direction is our efforts to scale up counter-terrorism efforts. The organization is in the process of activating a 260,000 rapid deployment counter-terrorism brigade and to provide logistic and financial support to frontline states facing terrorism. While ECOWAS remains firmly committed to raising its 5,000-man brigade under the auspices of the African Peace and Security Architecture, the activation of this rapid deployment force has become a necessity given the asymmetric security dynamics in the region.
Meanwhile, finance and defense ministers from the region will meet Friday to finalize funding plans for a $2.5 billion annual budget to support the new regional counter-terrorism force. Let's remain in Nigeria because lecturers under the auspices of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, staged peaceful protests across public universities on Tuesday, demanding that the government fulfill agreement reached since 2009. The demonstrations, coordinated by ASU, are the latest in a series of moves to press for better funding and payment of arrears. WDR's Osman Omar in Abuja reports.
From Calabar to Abuja and Ibadan to Nsukka, lecturers carried placards and chanted solidarity songs urging the government to honor the renegotiated 2009 agreement. The union says members have endured unpaid salaries, withheld allowances and decades-long salary structures, while the nation's universities remain underfunded.
This agreement in 2009 salary that we have been in was seen when fuel was less than 100 naira per litre. And today fuel is close to 1,000 naira a litre. Every other thing have shot up. Every other thing have increased except the salaries of academic staff. We are saying government implement this and increase the salaries of our members. The academic members are dying under suffering.
Tuesday's protests also rejected a proposed government loan scheme for staff, which ASU leaders dismissed as inadequate to address their welfare concerns. At the University of Ibadan and Emmanuel Alayonde University in Oyo State, lecturers warned that failure to sign the agreement at a scheduled meeting this week could push the system toward another nationwide shutdown.
How can government ask us to take loan to pay the school fees of our children? We reject this in all its intent and purpose.
We would like the general public to be informed that ASU is worried that it may no longer be able to continue to guarantee the industrial harmony that has been enjoyed for over 2 years, of which the federal government of Nigeria is no doubt proud.
ASU's national leadership says its National Executive Council will meet early next month to decide whether to escalate the strike action if the talks fail. For now, the protests remain peaceful, but the message from the classrooms is clear. Without government action, the lecture halls may soon fall silent again. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. IMF wraps up visit to Senegal as government unveils recovery plan amid hidden debt crisis. Côte d'Ivoire's Independent Electoral Commission seals the candidacy registration phase ahead of October 25 elections. Carnifing Court grants bail to 23 Pure protesters, warns against further unauthorized gatherings, and the African Chief of Defense Staff Summit ends today in Abuja, Nigeria. Still ahead in the news, we also have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
The Ghana Police Service has deployed reinforcement teams to Benyeri, Saula and surrounding communities in the Savannah region. This follows violent land clashes that claimed 6 lives and left dozens injured. The chief palace in Berry has also been set ablaze, escalating fears of food unrest. From Accra, now the detailed reports.
Security has been beefed up in the Savannah region after deadly communal clashes over land dispute in Binyeri in the Sola Tuna Kalba district. The Ghana Police Service, in collaboration with the armed forces, has deployed reinforcement teams to Binyeri, Sola, Guineri, and other adjoining communities to restore calm. The Inspector General of Police, Christian Tatayohuno, is personally leading a team from the national headquarters to assess the situation and engage with chiefs and opinion leaders. The clashes, which erupted on Sunday, August 24, has so far claimed 6 lives, with 18 others injured, many critically, after residents resisted the sale of land allegedly involving the local chief and a private developer. On Tuesday, the chief's palace in Binyeri was torched, marking a dangerous escalation in the conflict. The violence has displaced hundreds of residents, particularly women and children, while several homes and properties have been destroyed. Security agencies say the scattered nature of the communities poses logistical challenges, but patrols are being intensified. Authorities are appealing for calm, urging the feuding parties to work with security agencies to ensure lasting peace. For WDR, Nadi Tete, Accra.
Elsewhere in Liberia, power tussle between the executive and legislative arms of government has been described as a major challenge in the country's governance framework and political ecosystem. Representative Sumo Molba of Montserrado County District 3 warns that oversight, a core function of the legislature, has been sidelined within the Liberian parliament, hindering accountability and democratic checks and balances. Molba argues that such dynamics threaten fundamental democratic principles, particularly the system of checks and balances vital for responsible governance. WDR Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
The member of the House of Representatives told to WADR after a committee meeting on Tuesday that the executive influence or control over the legislature has over the years weakened the parliament's ability to examine governmental actions and respond to national developments. Smo Moba stated that efforts to hold the executive branch to account are frequently met with resistance, sometimes framed as a personal affront, contributing to an impasse on the floor of the lower chamber. Moluba, however, believes that the legislature can regain its balance and independence if fellow members avoid compromising actions and prioritize national interest.
Oversight has been the major issue. Our oversight function has been like play under the carpet. I think when we are discussing democracy, it should form part of the process. The executive branch control the legislature. So when there are ills, I think there should be no supporting negotiation because we are a separate branch that should be able to checkmate the executive branch.
Moluba urges the current leadership of the Liberian House of Representatives to implement reforms aimed at restoring transparency and accountability.
To have a unique house that will create the fulcrum for check and balance is to make sure we go through what we call the audit, right? If you can audit the executive branch, we need to do similar thing with the House or legislature.
Currently on recess, Liberians anticipate the return of a unified legislature shaken by months of impasse trickled by the leadership crisis between the ruling Unity Party and the opposition CDC. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, this segment of Newslink takes us back to Nigeria. The maiden edition of the African Chiefs of Defense Staff Summit ends today in Abuja, Nigeria. The conference is themed Combating Contemporary Threats to Regional Peace and Security in Africa, the role of strategic defense collaboration. From poor governance to poverty, piracy, organized and transitional crimes, insurgency continues to affect several areas, particularly in the Sahel, accounting for 51% of global terrorism deaths in 2024 alone. Our guest is Dr. Majid Peters, a Nigerian security expert who weighs in on the matter.
The problem I have is not the summit, it's not the conference, it's not the conversation, it's the commitment. Many a times people come to these tables because you feel they don't want their seat to be empty. People come to this table and they say those things you want to hear them say. But most of the times, when the deliberations, when there are ratifications needed, when agreements are reached, the commitment is not there. Nations are not proactive in issues around security. Rather, they are reactive. They wait for something to happen before they bounce off. So this conversation is long overdue. And I just hope that they will have a standing force, and this is going to be a continuous thing, because right now the Sahel, Africa generally, is becoming a very strong focus for organized terrorist groups. And one, the governance system permits. Two, the push and pull factors are very valuable here and appealing. Three, the porousness of the borders makes it easier for them to hibernate in places that threaten interference because of jurisdiction.
You mentioned the Sahel, a region that is currently battling escalating trend of terrorism. How do you think ECOWAS can achieve such recommendations that will come out of this regional security discussions when its neighbors, the Central Sahel, is battling escalating trend of terrorism?
You see, the issue about safety is one for all and all for one. And even nations who prior don't even establish strong diplomatic ties, when there is a threat that affects, that impacts, that threatens their sovereignty, they come together. Why do you have international mediation? Because we know that the escalation of this conflict might threaten sovereignty or can lead to humanitarian disaster. So irrespective of who is on the table, when the agreement is reached and it is beneficial, everybody will join. And even for nations that are not represented, like you could tell, Nigeria are having military conversations with Niger outside of ECOWAS because of neighbors. Burkina Faso, Mali, the last time their military chiefs came for Burkina Faso came on a tour in Nigeria to engage with their counterparts here. So I think irrespective of what it is, if the agreements are right, the commitments are solicited, and most importantly, the fundings are available, I think most nations will get on board, because nobody does not suffer the ill implications and effect and impact of actions of terror groups.
This Chief of Defense Staff Summit is just one of many summits or conferences that ECOWAS has held in an attempt to address terrorism within the region. Yet the region continues to face escalating trend of terrorism. Are there hopes, despite these many meetings, for a region free of terrorism?
I think there is hope that the thing is going to go to its lowest ebb if efforts have been put together. They've had a lot of conversations, and for every other summit that they have, they try to look at the gaps that happened in the one prior. And I think we should not give up on it. I dare hope that we're going to have zero terrorism. That's a very far-fetched dream. Are there hopes that terrorism is going to be defeated? Yes, that's very possible and it can work. Are there hopes that we're going to have a very, very reduced to the barest minimum of acts of terrorism and the presence of terror groups? Yes, that's a possibility if the commitments are absolute and the dedication towards achieving that is sincere. So I think we're on the right trajectory, especially now that they are putting funding forward. Formally, they don't actually discuss budgeting and funding and nations' commitments. So the Friday meeting is a record breaker, and we just hope that comes out very successfully. Everybody is getting fed up. The only people who key into it, because naturally are those who benefit from it. They don't see anything wrong with the system that you profit from. So I think it's high time for the whole nation to rise together and ensure that they make the place unbearable for terrorist groups.
Well, Dr. Maggie Peters is a Nigerian security expert who weighs in on the matter. Well, in football, we begin in Nigeria because the Nigeria Premier League has lifted its suspension of goalkeeper Adewola Adeyinka, who was previously sidelined over alleged involvement in betting. The league's chief operating officer, Davidson Owumi, confirmed that Adeyinka is now free to join any club this season after fully cooperating with the investigation. However, the NPFLA says the probe is still ongoing and any new evidence could impact the goalkeeper's future in the league. Let's talk a little bit about Chez, that is African Nations Championship tournament dedicated to African players playing their trade in the continent, because Morocco reached the final of the African Nations Championship Chez 2024 after overcoming holders Senegal 5-3 on penalties following a tense 1-1 draw after extra time at the Nelson Mandela Stadium in Kampala on Tuesday night. Atlas Lions, winners in 2018 and 2020, will now face Madagascar in Saturday's final in Nairobi after the island nation beat Sudan in the first encounter of the semi-finals. Elsewhere, the Confederation of African Football (CAF) is set to host its 47th Ordinary General Assembly in Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo on Monday, 6 October 2025. The Ordinary General Assembly will bring together leading figures in African football, including the president of CAF's 54 member association representing from the 6 zonal unions and senior football officials from across the continent. CAF President Patrice Motsepe will chair the 47th Ordinary General Assembly. And finally, UEFA Champions League draw is set for Thursday tomorrow, where so many Africans are expected to feature for big European clubs in the tournament. That's it for this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Falidou So and Ismaila Kamara for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X and Instagram at WADR News and English, and on Facebook, WADR English Service, and stream live at wadr.org. I am Sankule Janko. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Gulf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.
WADR. You can listen